Yep. Want to welcome everyone to this distinguished guest lecture, which is a first because it's a pair of lectures by colleagues who worked together for many, many years, and one of them recently had a change of venue and wanted to get away from the warm weather of Atlanta. It's my distinct privilege, and the Provost's office sends greetings. Most of them are preparing to leave tomorrow for a trip to the Middle East. It's difficult to get them over here. But Doctors Brody and Murray have done really incredible work with rural African American families as one particular focus. Since 1995, Dr. Brody is the director of University of Georgia Center for Family Research, and Dr. Velma McBride Murray had been the co-director until 2008 when she accepted an endowed chair position at Vanderbilt. I won't go through all of the long list of their accomplishments. Those of you who know the work in this area know how extensively they've published and how much they've contributed to the field. Dr. Murray is also the head of NIMH's African American Scientist Mentoring Network, and I understand from Dr. Brody he's also now working in the College of Public Health at Emory University as well as at the University of Georgia. I got to know them back when they created and developed an NIMH Developing Center proposal, which unlike most things, even back then and even more clearly now, don't get funded the first time around. But their center was so compelling that they did get funded and have done some really interesting work across the translational spectrum. As you know from the flyer, what they've done is implemented two large studies to identify and track the contextual factors that promote healthy development in rural African American families. They also have designed prevention programs theoretically based and empirically tested now to deter adolescents from becoming involved in activities that derail positive development, specifically alcohol use, substance use, and early onset sexual activity. The first such intervention, the Strong African American Families Program, was tested in a randomized trial with more than 600 families. One of the most impressive things I remember when visiting them, which they may or may not talk about, was the follow-up rates for their families, well over the years keeping above 90%, which is incredibly impressive. They're doing additional interventions that are being tested, and they're two different but linked presentations. Dr. Brody will talk first about parenting processes and participation in a preventive intervention, moderating the link between the 5 HTT-LPR status, and you'll know what that is, and longitudinal increases in substance use. So it's my pleasure to welcome first up to the podium Dr. Jean Brody, and I'll be back to tell you the title of Dr. Murray's talk. Jean? We'll see if we can get the lights down.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Dean Gonzalez, for the invitation. Velma and I are very pleased to have this opportunity today. In my talk, I'm going to tell you about a journey, and this journey has transpired over the last 5 years, and it was made possible by the Developing Center grant from NIMH. There really was no other way we could have done this work without seed money from that Developing Center grant, and you'll understand why in a little while. So if we go back in time, maybe to the beginning of the Bush administration, even though we all want to forget about that time, what was happening around the year 2000 was the excitement over the human genome. And people in scientific quarters everywhere, and particularly at the National Institutes of Health, heralded the mapping of the human genome, and it heralded a time when a lot of funding at the National Institutes of Health was being directed towards genomics and neuroscientists. And at that time, and since that time, a lot of scientists like all of you and myself and Velma were experiencing and detecting some threat to the kind of work that we do. There were many scientists who felt they were going to get crowded out of science. And by that I mean the work that we all do in identifying protective factors in communities and translating those protective factors into prevention programs for specific populations, many people felt would no longer be valued. And I had and have many colleagues who threw their arms up in despair because there was less money at the National Institutes of Health for looking at protective processes and the development of prevention programs. And it got so bad that many scientists became disillusioned, and I know many behavioral and prevention scientists who left the field. I think that was a shame, but they were getting strong messages that there was no longer room for them. So I thought about this, and this is the journey that we're going to share today. I'm going to tell you about this. I reframed it for myself. I thought that if we truly believe in our work, if we truly believe that we have identifying processes that make a difference in people's lives, and if we truly believe in the efficacy of our preventative interventions, then this was the best thing that ever happened to us. And the reason that I felt that way was we will gain great legitimacy if we can show that our protective processes that we have worked so hard to study over the years and our prevention programs which we have worked so hard to develop can ameliorate demonstrated genetic risk. So I'm going to share with you today our journey in dealing with what many people thought as the threat from human genomics and how we decided to turn it into something that we can embrace. With seed money from the P20, I was fortunate to get together a small group of people, and this was 5 years ago. We still get together every 3 months right now. It included Rob Philibert, who's a psychiatrist and human geneticist at the University of Iowa. It included Alexander Todorov, a genetic statistician from Washington University in St. Louis, and Steve Beach, a clinical psychologist from the University of Georgia. And we started meeting. And we started meeting around the topic of gene-by-environment interactions. And we were interested in if we could find genetic links with some of the outcomes that we're interested in, particularly substance use, would we be able to design studies that allowed us to see whether protective processes and participation in preventative interventions could override those genetic diatheses.